What would it mean to be a teenage girl and have so much anxiety that school becomes impossible for you? And what would it mean to be that girl's parents, watching your daughter struggle so much? On our final episode of this season, you'll meet that teenager who's grown into a courageous woman, and you'll meet her parents and hear one family's story of hope. Next on Speak Your Mind. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps, licensed psychologist with Dream Life Psychological Services. There was a time when people thought that mental illness was something that only adults struggled with, but now we know better, that children, even children from loving families with lots of resources, can develop anxiety, depression, and other mental health problems, and yet only 50% of children and their families actually get the help they need. Tonight, we're going to hear from one of the families who got that help, what their journey was like, and what that journey has meant for each of them. And so we can all be fully present with my guests and soak in their stories of resilience and hope. We won't be taking your calls tonight. Instead, just sit back and enjoy. My guests are Rebecca Oakes, a therapist who specializes in treating very young children and their families with mental health problems, and who herself struggled with mental illness as a child, and her parents, Leslie and Brad Oakes, who are here to share their experience of parenting a child who was struggling with mental health problems. Thanks so much to all of you for being here with us tonight. And Rebecca, I think I want to start with you, and just for you to begin to tell the story of what do you remember about when you first sort of had struggles?
I think I was really, really young. I think the first time I can remember having anxiety, probably 4 or 5, although I know I had it before then too. Definitely when going to preschool and separating from my mom.
So that was a harder thing for you,
yes.
Was separating from your mom.
Yep.
And do you sort of remember the story the same way, Leslie?
Yes, I do. I remember strategizing with our carpool for preschool, and we decided early on that I would not be the driver in the morning because of that. So, and it would be hard. We'd almost kind of rip Rebecca off of me to put her in the car to take her to Lakeside Press Preschool, but once she got there, she was fine. So we didn't think it was a problem that would last much beyond preschool.
And so, Brad, Leslie just said that was sort of alluding to the fact that you all were thinking maybe this was going to be one of those things that kids just grow out of.
Yeah, that was what we thought. And when I was small, I had some similar versions, but did grow out of it. So we expected it was something that was temporary, and with a little growing up and maturing and getting comfortable being away from home, that would change it. So that was our hope.
And so we know, Rebecca, that that's not quite the way it worked out, because sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it works out that way for kids, and sometimes it doesn't quite work out.
Yep.
And when was the next sort of, I would say, I guess, like big thing that you remember of difficulty?
Probably the first day of first grade when Mom tried to leave, and I held on to her like the whole day and cried the whole day in front of all of my friends and everything like that. And they were like looking at me in the hallway like, "Are you okay?" But with their classmates. So that probably would be the next time like that I vividly remember having trouble.
And you made it through that time because you didn't just stay in first grade for the rest of your life. So,
no.
And what do you remember about how you made it through? Do you remember anything, or do you just know the stories that Mom and Dad tell about that?
I remember I had a bravery ring, which was very, very helpful and important. And I think I actually had more than one throughout my lifetime.
And it was, so I gave Rebecca a bravery ring, and I said, "This ring will not make you brave, but this ring will remind you of how brave you are."
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So she would use her bravery ring. She'd look at her bravery ring and she'd know inside she was very brave.
I think we all kind of need bravery.
I know.
Right?
Exactly.
I hope you brought
think
more
so.
for tonight.
Yes. So yeah, I remember that definitely.
So that was actually a helpful thing then.
Yeah, that was the helpful thing. And it didn't always work, but you know, what does? So yeah, that's specifically something I for sure do remember. Yeah.
And you told me that kind of like that when you and I were chatting on the phone, that the sort of the next big time for you was around maybe 5th or 6th grade in your in that sort of almost middle schooly
third
time.
grade was hard too, but somehow I figured it out. I had a really good 3rd grade teacher, and then the next time was 5th grade. When I was in 5th grade and I was 11.
And during that time, was that the time when you started having struggles with just sort of like the I'm so anxious I can't even eat at school then?
Yes. Definitely. So I wouldn't eat at school. I also wouldn't eat at most of my friends' houses. And I would eat, so instead of eating, I wouldn't eat breakfast, I wouldn't eat lunch. And then I would just eat from, I think we were done at 2:30. And so I'd come home at 2:30 and then just eat like continuously for the rest of the night.
Because you were hungry.
and then go to bed and then get up and do it all over in the morning.
And so what was that like for you all then during that time, Leslie?
That was much harder. In 5th grade, it was much harder because we realized that maybe we had a problem that wasn't going to be something Rebecca was going to be growing out of. And so that was when we really started to realize we were probably going to be needing some sort of help.
Yeah. No, that was certainly a stretch. And I remember, I think it was your 11th birthday, where you were just all of us, it was very clear she didn't want to grow up. She actually kind of framed it that way. Because I was saying, what's your birthday? Why aren't you a little more celebratory? And for her, it was, I don't know if I want to grow up. And so that was certainly a signal that, we're going to need to pay some attention here and figure out what we're going to need to do to get through that.
What an insightful comment from an 11-year-old, though, too, as a way of just being able to put words to what your feelings were about that.
Yeah.
And so then, is that the time when you first started getting professional help?
I was hospitalized in February of '97.
Yep.
And because I wasn't able to eat enough to keep
Your
to
body
have any
going.
weight, yes. And so I was losing a lot of weight, and so my doctor had me admitted to the hospital. It wasn't the psych ward, it was just, regular
Pediatric.
the pediatric unit. And so I was there for about a week, but when I was there, then Dr. Peter Swingen, who became my psychiatrist, came and met me. And also Dr. Annie Loosman, who was Annie Michaels at the time, came and I met her, and she became my therapist afterwards. So.
And to be clear, you did not have an eating disorder, that
No.
was all just
No.
anxiety
Yep.
driven,
Yep.
right?
It was all because I was worried about throwing up, and I didn't want to throw up, so then I just wouldn't eat.
And how was that, like, how did the hospitalization come about? Because you as the parents would have been driving the boat on that, not Rebecca at the time. So
We saw her family practice doctor, and we, through that process, made an appointment to see Dr. Swingen. At the time, it was a 3-month wait. And so then we were given, just the normal, I think, protocols of what you might do when a family comes in with this kind of an issue. And then what we did is we realized we just couldn't wait. And so it was just a couple weeks later that we went in again. And then our family doctor said, why don't we admit her into the hospital, because then she will be seen today.
So you had a very clever family doctor
Yes.
who knew how to negotiate around a broken system
Yes,
then.
yes.
Or a limping system, if not a fractured, if not broken.
Yep.
So I love it when professionals can show some ingenuity about them and say it's like the system isn't working, but that's not going to stop me from getting these people the help that they need. What was it like for you, Brad, seeing that your daughter needed to go into the hospital?
Yeah, well, it was hard, of course. You know, anytime you have a family member with an illness, it's tough to see, but it was also reassuring because we knew then we would at least start to get some of that intense help that we felt we really did need to have. So that stretch of time as she was in the hospital, it was a little bit scary until you kind of get a sense of, get some of the help in and start doing some of the assessments. So it was, you know, a combination of concerning, but also you felt like, okay, we're getting on here and getting after some things that felt like were really lingering prior to that. Because it was probably a month's worth of, you know, thinking it was a eating disorder, and then determining no, it wasn't that, and then realizing that no, we do need the hospitalization piece so we can get you'll get the help sooner rather than wait for kind of the regular scheduling part of it. So it was scary, but also felt like this is what needed to be done.
I think like you bring up a really good point that many families and many individuals, when it's an individual who's seeking help, is that they've been, by the time you're actually calling for that level of help or calling for help, you've been struggling and suffering for so long that it is a relief to go and get the help.
Yeah.
And what was it like for you to start getting help, Rebecca?
You know, I think when I was in the hospital, it was hard because nobody really seemed to understand why I didn't want to eat, and I didn't want to eat because I wasn't, you know, my parents weren't there the whole time and all of that, and so that made me anxious. So I think that was hard. But aside from that, I mean, I think it was really good that I could get in and see Dr. Swingen and Annie, because I know with my patients and things like that, that there's really long waits to get in and get what you need to get done.
Now, you and I both know that there's sometimes kids feel forced into getting help, and that when we have kids who are forced into getting help in our office, sometimes they're not always the most willing person in the room. And so were you a willing person at that time?
In 5th grade, yes. And then by the time we got to when I was in 9th grade, then I went off of medication and onto Prozac. It took me the whole summer to go off of the medication I was on and onto Prozac. And Prozac was not working at all. And then, so in the beginning of 10th grade, one day I told my mom, like, I just can't do this. This is ridiculous. You know, like, you're walking me to school and you're tying my shoes, and it's ridiculous and it's embarrassing, and I'm not gonna do this anymore. Like, if we're not gonna figure something out, then I'm just gonna stay home.
So you went on strike.
I did.
You went on student strike. Now,
I did.
I have to share with the audience that she may be one of the most intelligent young women who I know, and she went on school strike, which is that's a big thing. When you know you have a smart kid, smart kids usually don't do that either, right?
Exactly.
That was a statement of something big has to change here. What was that like for you, watching her struggle then that much at 9th grade? Because that was like kind of a jump to a new level of suffering for you.
Yes, it sure was. Well, and I want to say that for 5th grade, what I remember is Rebecca remembers that transition to working with a therapist as going pretty well. What she told me at first, though, is, Mom, I really don't need a therapist because I tell our cat Gracie everything.
Oh.
You know, so she said, I really don't need any other help, Mom. And I said, well, Annie is somebody who's been trained, and she knows things that we don't know and that Gracie doesn't know, and Annie might be able to really help you. And so for any parent out there has a child who says, no, I don't really, everything I need is right here in my own family, I just want to encourage, we can get the number up beyond 50% for young children going in for help. And I would just say it's so good if you can. And so Rebecca had developed a very good relationship with her therapist to the point where even when Rebecca was well, she went in occasionally so that her therapist, Annie, and she knew what it was like to have a Rebecca who is well and doing all the things that Rebecca was doing when she was feeling good. So then by the time she got to 9th grade and she was having troubles, we were all really worried about what was happening now, because the first depressive episode was very difficult, but the second was even worse and so much suffering.
Yeah.
Very hard
Yeah,
to
the
watch.
hardest part to watch was to see her world get so small.
Yeah.
You know, so freshman, sophomore in high school, you know, their world should be expanding.
Yeah.
But with what Rebecca was dealing with, her world was getting smaller. You know, not able to go to school, or only go to school with a lot of help. And then even when she was in school, she wasn't comfortable. And then it was to the point, I can't remember, was it end of your freshman year that you actually half days were at home?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was, for me, that was a really hard part to watch, was how small her world was getting, and recognizing that, you know, we did have to do something. We're likely going to have to do something pretty dramatic in order to break through that.
Did it feel small to you, Rebecca?
Yeah, it felt small. Because I wasn't comfortable going to movie theaters, because then, like, what if I couldn't sit on the end? Or like going to church, which had been a huge source of support. But then again, like, what if I didn't get to sit on the end, and, you know, things like that, like, in case I did have to throw up, like, then I could go. And then, yeah, like, not going to friends' houses. I mostly stayed at home and, like, just hung out at home, which...
With Gracie.
Yes.
You and Gracie.
Yes, and my sister. Yeah, and my best friend, who was awesome and would come over practically all the time. She's amazing.
And at some point in this very small and world that kept closing in and getting smaller and smaller, there was a decision made that you would go to the Menninger Clinic, and which is a far ways away. And how do you make a decision to send your child that far away? Because that, for those of you who don't know, that when I say they went to the Menninger Clinic, this was in Kansas. And so Kansas is not right next door. It's not over the bridge, right? That's not the state that's over the bridge, so.
Right. Well, it helped that Annie Luzman had gone to Menninger for some graduate training, and that was the therapist that Rebecca had been using for many, many years. And we had such a trust level with them. And so Dr. Swingen and Annie with their treatment team decided that might be a good idea. And Brad and I knew about the Menninger Clinic, and Rebecca was born in Overland Park, Kansas. So it wasn't too far away, and we actually had friends from our old neighborhood who, once Rebecca got to Menninger, would come on the weekends. And I think that Sandy Isham even bought you a jacket one day at the mall. So we had that.
There was familiarity with that part of the country, and knowing that we could visualize it even before we were getting there. And we lived in Kansas for about 7 years, and so during that period, had been to Topeka, so it wasn't scary in that sense. It was a long ways away, but it was familiar, so that was another helpful part of it.
Now, Rebecca, I'm thinking about you being the child who was clinging to mom, and now you're going to Kansas, and you're going to be dropped off. And mom's not coming back at the end of the day.
Yes, right.
And how did that go over?
You know, I think I got used to it eventually. But I wasn't a big fan in the beginning, but I also realized that I wasn't going to get the help that I needed in Duluth. And so even though it was, I knew that it was going to be really, really hard and probably really, really horrible, I knew that that was something that I would just have to do, see if it worked or not.
And what was it like for you leaving her there then, Leslie?
Well, it was very difficult. I felt like someone had taken my heart out and thrown it on the ground and stomped on it. But Rebecca has anxiety and depression, So she would have suicidal thoughts, and they were torturing her. And it's really hard to watch your child suffer. And I thought anything that could help her, that's what we needed to do. And we were really united in it. And like Brad and I tell people, this is not something that you wake up in the morning and think, yeah, I think I'll just send my child off to Topeka, Kansas. I knew intellectually that it was the place where miracles happen. I'd known about Menninger Clinic for a long time. But it was very difficult to send Rebecca, but I didn't want her to have suicidal thoughts her whole life. I wanted us to learn a way to kind of break through that and move to a place where she could lead a full life. Like Brad said, an open, expansive life.
And because there are worse things than leaving your daughter at the Menninger Clinic, and you could envision those, and you could envision a worse life than being left at the Menninger Clinic. What has been most helpful for you, or what was most helpful for you there?
I think one of the most helpful things was that, like, during the first couple of weeks I was there, we realized that I shouldn't be on the adolescent unit, and that instead I needed to go to the obsessive compulsive disorder unit, OCD unit. And that was really helpful because when I was on the adolescent unit, they really focused on me not eating and having to eat and nagging me about eating. And when I moved to the OCD unit, they were concerned, but they were also like, well, she'll eat when she's ready, which I did eventually. And so it was just like feeling understood versus like on the adolescent unit, like I didn't want to be an adolescent.
And teaching you skills on how to deal with all the thoughts and the anxiety thoughts that you had then.
Yeah, to me that was what was really clear that Rebecca needed, was the intensity of being at a Menninger, around the clock, inpatient, really type service. So, and it was a combination of working on whatever the medication might need to be to stabilize, but then also what would the therapy need to be to couple up to give her the best chance at getting well. And when we dropped her off, it was the adolescent unit, so it was really hard to get a feel for what it was going to be. And I had gone back a couple weeks later after she had moved, and I could tell it was just a better situation. It synced up better with where Rebecca was at and what she needed. And then too, again, I could tell the whole experience was about getting well, whereas, the outpatient has its benefits too, but for Rebecca, that just wasn't intense enough. She needed something that was really pretty continuous.
We're getting really close to the end of our time together, because this time goes by so quickly. But I guess I would want you to address briefly what are the things that you do now that help you now, and what would you want to say to parents of kids out there who may have a child who's struggling?
I think things that I do now, some of the cognitive behavioral techniques that I learned then, I am still using now. And I also teach to kiddos at work. And so I think those were really, really helpful. I think that getting enough sleep.
And understanding the importance of that.
Yes, understanding the importance of sleep. And for me, structure and routine is really, really helpful. And so having all those pieces and fitting them together really makes it easier. I think I would say for parents who have kids who have anxiety or depression, sometimes you need a higher intensity or level of care, and really your mental health professionals are the people that know that and can help you figure out where you're supposed to be at and what level is appropriate for you.
And what would you say to the kids?
I would say buckle up.
Get that bravery ring on.
Yes. Yeah, because it doesn't feel worth it, and it is worth it, and it doesn't feel like you have any hope, and then at the end there's nothing but hope. And so at least if you try, you know that you've tried, and that was eventually what happened for me.
Tell people where you were last weekend.
I was in Boston for a program that I am in. It's a national program for infant parent mental health. So I go out there every 2 months for a 3-day weekend. So for 2 years.
You're not just with Gracie anymore.
No, I'm not.
That's an incredible story. And kind of in 25 words or less, Leslie, what would you add to that?
The main thing I would want to add is don't, parents, keep trying things, because you hear now even the Menninger Clinic had to move Rebecca from one program to another. Never to give up hope. If it's not working out, try another way, but don't give up, because the benefits of being well are just phenomenal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all three of you for being here. I referenced at the beginning of the show that only 50% of children with mental health problems get the help they need. We're really glad that Rebecca has the parents that she has and got her the help, and we're really glad that Rebecca hung in there. You saw how life-changing getting help has been for Rebecca and her parents. If you're part of the 50% who didn't get help as a child and still are experiencing problems, know this: you can still get that help, and that help can make a difference now. Why? Because healing doesn't have a shelf life. And if you're wondering if your child needs help, get help so that you know the answer to that question. You can talk to your physician or child's pediatrician, but seeking mental health care does not require a physician referral. You can also just call yourself. Thanks for joining us on our last show of the season, and remember, just because we're off the air doesn't mean you have to stop watching. You can always find us on our website at wdsc.org/speak, where you can rewatch this episode, look up an old episode, or just binge watch all 150 episodes from our 9 seasons on the air. And before we leave you tonight, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of my wonderful guests for helping transform how we think about mental illness, one story of hope at a time. And I want to thank each of you for watching, calling in questions, and carrying the message of hope forward. Together, we are all ambassadors of hope, creating a more compassionate community. Mental health problems are treatable. We all deserve to get the help we need. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps. Thanks for watching, and good night.